Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes to the United Nations General Assembly after a lapse of 5 years. The last time he addressed the United Nations General Assembly was in 2014. He did come in 2015, but only to participate in the SDG summit. So there's been a gap of 5 years since he last visited the UN to address this General Assembly. In those 5 years, India's orientation and engagement with the globe has grown in multifaceted ways. Today, there is a desire and will to engage globally across the spectrum of various countries. So we are doing many things differently this time compared to previous such visits of prime ministers. So let me start by giving you some changes or innovative ways that we have used to leverage Prime Minister's visit here. For the first time, large groups of countries will engage with Prime Minister. For example, the Pacific Island states. These are small states, developing states from the Pacific. You know, the Indo-Pacific is a growing area of interest for India. And we will have leaders from 12 Pacific Island states engage with the Prime Minister. This number one. Number two is, for the first time again, the CARICOM as a community, its leadership is keen to engage with India and Prime Minister Modi. So in 2 meetings, we will have 26 leaders engage with the Prime Minister of India. This is a quantum change in terms of our engagement with the world compared to previous years. Climate change is at the center of discussions at the UN. Symbolic of our efforts at climate action, in a very small way, you've seen that we have contributed to a solar park at the UN premises. This is only a small reflection of the way in which India is going to address issues at the UN. We believe in action-oriented, tangible progress. For many years, people sometimes try and deride the UN as a talking shop. Talking is important, but so is working. We are walking the talk in these areas. So climate change is an important area. Prime Minister has been given a pride of place in terms of being in the first cohort of leaders who will address the climate summit.
Also, terrorism there will also be a meeting on terrorism. What will be India's focus? Because India has been highlighting the victim. Will there be a highlight on this aspect as well?
Terrorism has and will be a major factor in India's foreign policy orientation. That is because it affects our people in ways which very few external influences do. So terrorism will always be a factor as India engages with the world. This year has seen 2 very significant multilateral developments in terms of countering terrorism. You will remember, for the first time, the UN Security Council condemned a terrorist attack in India against our soldiers. In this case, it was following the Pulwama attack. After that, you are also aware that after more than a decade of trying, we were able to get the United Nations Sanctions Committee to list Masood Azhar as a designated terrorist. These are 2 factors, both in the space and scope of 1 year, where there has been movement. Today, terrorism and terrorists operate well beyond boundaries. They are using the social media platforms, the internet in inimical ways. So the focus of the event that Prime Minister will participate in at the UN is on countering terrorist narratives and violent extremists through internet and cyberspace. You will appreciate that this is an emerging threat, it is a growing threat, and is a threat to all of us. And so this will be an area in which we will focus. You're also aware, perhaps, that Prime Minister has called for an international conference on terrorism. This, I'm certain, will again be articulated. We will pursue our narrative against terrorism in every forum.
So what about the bilaterals? A major bilateral is slated with Mr. Trump. They will be meeting first at Houston, then again here in New York. How do you see this? How do you envisage this kind of meeting and growing engagement between India and US?
There has been a consistent trajectory of boom in India-US relations. This is bipartisan. This straddles differences of parties in the US as well as in India. This is perhaps the fourth instance of Prime Minister and President Trump meeting this year. They met at the G20, they met at the G7, they will meet in Houston, and they will meet again in New York. You can understand the intensity and the growth in our ties. These are reflections of that boom and rapid growth in our ties between India and US, and we look forward to that meeting in anticipation.
So coming back to terrorism, this UN thing is happening just ahead of FAT. Will also use this opportunity to highlight in front of the world, to name and shame Pakistan for what it's doing.
Countering terrorism is a multifaceted activity. The FATF operates on evidence which is factual in nature and which is substantive. It is based on empirical data. That is a separate process. Of course, anybody who threatens peace and security of our people deserves to be addressed in a matter and very forcefully. These are all tactical decisions. How we do it, when we do it, you will just have to wait and see how this evolves. But let me assure you, India will always be in the forefront of of addressing terrorist threats from wherever and whenever this happens.
Sir, also coming back to one issue that recently India has abrogated articles of big powers and other countries that seems to be on India's side. Do you think, because since two ministers will be here who will be engaging, Prime Minister will be engaging, do you think this issue is also going to figure out, India will explain the world what is it about and why it should not be internationalized and why there is no need of a mediation in it?
So the United Nations is a platform for multilateral engagement. It's a platform for collaboration, for cooperation. If there are efforts by individual countries to misuse that platform, we know how to address them. Some people refer to the UN as a place of sacred drama. That means there are some who use it for dramatics. There are others who give it a sacrosanct, a nature of sacrosanct importance in their orientation. We are not those who will use it for dramatic purposes. We are those who believe in focusing and addressing issues in a reasoned manner. If someone stoops, we have ways of addressing it. When they stoop, we soar. We do not need to stoop in the way that they stoop. We have a forward-looking vision. We will soar when they stoop.
Sir, Mr. Imran Khan has specifically said that we are going to come to UN and tell the world what India is doing in Kashmir. And how do you look at this? Are you countering it?
This is my 35th year in diplomacy. I have seen many theatrics in the General Assembly. Many people use their 30 minutes of global attention in the ways that they want. People remember them for what they are, anachronisms who do not conform to the global norm. If a country and a leader want to do that, he or she is free to do that. I have heard rants, I have heard abuses from different leaders, yet who remembers them? They are footnotes in the path of history. If people want to be remembered like that, it's their free will to do so.
Sir, will India be taking up the human rights issues across the border which is happening? Because we have seen that human rights has become a core of this core theme of UN these days. So will India be taking up, because we have seen Sindhis, Baluchis and others protesting against the human rights violations in their region?
India is a serious actor. Its voice is heard with seriousness. What we do, when we do, we will do in the way we want it. It's not for broadcast purposes, you will appreciate. We are a player of consequence in the world, not a dramatis personae who just is a fleeting presence on the world stage.
Sir, you said you are here from quite some time. There's a big event going on in Houston. Howdy. There's a lot of excitement in India as well as in the US. I was meeting some people. How do you look at this event, sir?
I wish I was there in Houston. I'm not as fortunate as you to be there because I have to make preparations here when Prime Minister lands. But all of us are excited that this event is taking place in Houston. It's a reflection of the strong ties that bind India and the US, the people-to-people interactions that are the glue that keeps us together, as well as the strategic importance that both countries attach to each other. That's why two of the leaders will be present there to indicate to the Indian community, to the US and to the world at large that ours is a partnership whose time has come.
Thank you so much for talking to us and agreeing to speak to us at this time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.